Another thing I wanted to chat with you about, Joel, just because of again how many candidates you talk to or you're engaging with on. I know you're big on TikTok, but obviously LinkedIn and some of the other platforms as well. You get a lot of visibility into the market in general, right, and the sentiment of the market as well. The last couple of years we've saw these big terms kind of pop up: the Great Resignation. The newest one was the big stay, right? I mean,
The big
they
state.
get all this
Who
traction.
comes up with this stuff?
I don't know, but I'm just curious. How do you think the average professional is viewing work in 2023 when we think about things like remote work? We think about hybrid. The status of what is even a career? Like, how do you think the average professional is viewing their work in this day and age as opposed to maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I mean, I think the idea of just really linear careers, that idea I think is changing rapidly, and I think there's just more openness to these weird career paths that you can take. And I think that was inevitable to happen because you've got technology moving really fast, which means it
Hmm.
creates new jobs. Like I think there's going to be a whole set of new jobs in 10 years that nobody knows about. So you could be doing something completely different to now. So there's not so much of that just kind of move up 20 years at one company. That mindset's left. And then I think now there's more people than ever that aren't sold on like that, just like that corporate grind and just moving up the ladder. And I think a
Right.
lot more people
Right.
are valuing flexibility. And there's this idea now of like, I can kind of create the work that I want around the
Hmm.
life that I want. And that's enabled by technology, right? Because you can work remotely. There's a lot of online technology you can use to make yourself more efficient. Um, so I just think that has changed, and I think a lot of that was in COVID. Like people just had that reality and priority check about things, and so we saw that a lot. A lot of people were talking about how they value time with their family more, or they
Mm.
value uh, time to do things that they're passionate about over a commute. Um, I think really I see that with people who are actually more established than necessarily younger. I actually see a lot more like younger people. There are a lot more younger people who want to go to the office because their
Yeah.
social life is built in the office, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
you just graduate college, you move to New York, you don't know anybody. A good way to get to know people is to get a job and you make
Mhm.
relationships and friends. Fast forward 10 years, and if you're in a really, big corporate job where you're not necessarily off your computer a lot of time, or the bulk of the work is done on the computer, that's I think when you start to go, yeah, you know what, like maybe I don't need to go in the office. um,
Right.
but it's different for everybody, and I always just say like this is where employers now they just have to be mindful that there's different mindsets on this. And at the end of the day, if you are trying to create a particular culture, again, going to like matching people, then you need to find people that value the same things that you value. And if you want somebody's skills and they're like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to work remotely, that's what I want to do. If you want them to be a part of your team, then you need to figure out how to get them a part of your culture remotely, and you need to think about how can we bring them in, still feel like they're part of the team. um,
Yeah.
and I think more and more people now, I mean, I get questions all the time. Side hustles are huge. I don't really
Mhm.
know too many people that aren't thinking about a side hustle. And again, what we talked about earlier, this fractional stuff that we're going to see in the recruitment space, we're going to see that with a lot of roles, especially the more AI takes precedence in jobs,
Yeah.
because you could get more done with less. So you could work with multiple clients, right?
Do you think this is something that can be reversed? And the reason for this question is I'm wondering, is it possible that as companies just have not done a good job in the last decade or 20 years, whatever, of making it very clear as to what opportunities are available, what development could look like? Or do you think we just need to accept the reality that the relationship between employees and employers is changing, and it's much more of a, I don't want to use the term gun for hire, but it's much more like, we come in, we do what we need to do, and then we move to the next opportunity, as opposed to what it used to be, which was, hey, you work with one company for 20 years, 30 years, you retire.
Yeah.
There's that sense of loyalty. Do you think that sense of loyalty can be recaptured, or do you think we just need to kind of accept that this is where employment is heading?
I think I think you've got to accept it, but then also realize that like there's always going to be, and again, it goes back to that core recruiting team. I think this is what companies need to be thinking about is like different employees value different things. So you might have somebody who's in their early 20s that wants to experience a lot of different companies and learn like what they're wanting to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they're more of a gun for hire, right? Where you can bring them in on a contract basis, or maybe they're a permanent employee, but you just know they're only going to be there for 2 to 3 years. I think the what companies need to shift away from is just trying to keeping like still viewing people like what you described at the beginning. Like not everybody who joins your company is going to be a lifer, but ultimately you're going to have that core group of people. Like you will have to have a group of people that are committed to the product, are committed to the mission of what you're doing. You have to have that, but not everybody who's in your organization needs to be a part of that. And I think companies, they really pressure that, right? Because like culture fit.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot better if you just lift up and go, you know what, at this stage of this person's life, they're maybe not ready and they could still bring value, right? Like what, you can't bring value unless you're 100% committed to the goal. Like, I don't actually believe that. I think you can bring value, but you've got to understand that like, you know, particularly younger people, I think they more tend to think like that. But then who knows where they're going to be 10 years from now? Maybe 10 years after bouncing around, they're like, you know, I want to be committed to something. And so again, I look at my life, young father, young family. Right now, my priority is actually more for my family and spending time with them. But as my kids get older and they don't want to spend as much time with me, or we shift seasons, you know, I could be 40. I still have career left in front of me, right? And maybe that's when I jump into something that I want to build something. So I think there's different seasons for people as well.
Yeah, culture fit is often, like we talked about, a one-sided conversation from companies to candidates. I feel like that's another one of those that it's one-sided. It's like, do you fit with us versus the idea of like cultural synergy, right? Looking at the other person, are they going to be a good addition? Do we vibe with who they are as an individual? Do our values align? And it's almost looking at it from a relational standpoint versus a transactional standpoint, you know?
Yeah, a company that does this really well that I talked to a while back is Refine Labs. I don't know if you guys know them, but Chris Walker is CEO, and I had a couple of members of the talent team on the show, and they're just saying like that's one of the things that's how they look at talent. Is like some people are, I forget what they call it, like maybe like bridge employees where they're there for like a certain amount of time, and they kind of know. And I love that idea because again, when you look at just the numbers, tenure is down, right? If it's 3 to 4 years, but you still get hiring managers that like get hung up on, oh, is this person going to be in 5 years? 5 years, you know, or even with older employees, like, well, they might retire in the next 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, yeah, and if they work that whole time with you, you got a deal, you know, kind of thing. But it's being aware of that. So then why would you view every employee that like they're a lifer? And then it takes the pressure off too, because one of the things that I do see with a lot of companies is like, especially when the culture is a strong one and they're wanting to build a strong culture, what can actually happen is people then like project that they're a part of the culture. And then you have like an underlying group of people that aren't really in line with the culture. That can create a weird divide as well. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's okay if you're not sold on the culture in your first week.
Yeah.
Right.
Companies have such a lot of companies have such a distorted view of culture, and I actually enjoy kind of consulting leaders and consulting teams on like what culture actually is, like, you know, culture. And that's why I always push the verbiage of culture add, not culture fit, because this isn't about building teams of the same people that like each other. Like it's about bringing someone in who is different than you, and different is good.
What did you think of that LinkedIn post the other day about like, because I agree, but like likability is such a big thing. So like
huge.
So like
likability is huge. You still need to be someone that I can work with, someone that I want to work with, but that doesn't mean that you have to be the same as me. And we don't have time to unbox the whole conversation of diversity, but it's like Joe, you and I are probably very different people. You know, we're probably very different when it comes down to some of our tastes, some of our working styles. Me and Andrew is probably a better example. Me and Andrew are very different. He's much more detail orientated and strategically minded than I am. I'm just like I'm trying to control chaos. I'm a Tasmanian devil in a china shop. But I, you know, outside of our 9 till 5, Andrew and I have done a lot of collaboration, built this podcast, and you know, we're partners with the Talent Table. But like, so we work very closely. We're very different, but we enjoy working together. And I think that's the kind of point. It's like, hey, if I was going to hire you, yes, you need to be likable, but you don't need to be the same as Daryl. And I think that's what I was trying to say.
No, but that's what. But and again, that's what a lot of companies. You know, I mean, that is how a lot of companies hire as well, or you know, I've heard the thing like, oh yeah, it'd be great to go out for like a beer with after work, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it's obviously like probably like, well, I guess you could be different in that situation, but it's real, right? And that's why these are decisions, or you know, these issues are so huge, because it's really, really hard to unpack someone's motive behind things. But I think if there's like this pressure, then once you get at a company that you have to like fit in, and this expectation of that, I think that's where it can just start to really backfire, and you can get people.
You can get into some dangerous waters when you start basing your hiring around would they be good at happy hour. you can get some dangerous waters.
Yeah. It's true. It is true.
It's awesome. Andrew, did you have anything you wanted to add before we wrap up here?
No.
If not,
no, I think this is great. Go ahead, Daryl.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll do my usual rollout. But Joel, we're super grateful you came on, man. We know, show off your Yeti for us. We know you're a busy guy. You can, you know, and you're a very busy guy, as we all are. But we appreciate your knowledge that we've kind of unpacked today. I know there's a lot of value. We'll have to have you on again down the road, because I just think we scratched the surface on some of the stuff that we talked about. You've got, I felt like you had a lot more we could have unboxed.
Joe Rogan's 3-hour show. That's what we could have done.
Maybe a live show is in our future. I feel like that might be.
Yeah, that would be fun.
That's what you should organize on your on the chat, is you should just get like a 4-hour segment and then invite different people on. And I always think those. Hey,
we're going that route. We got a collaboration down the road with a couple other kind of podcast type people. So we'll do that. But hey, people, if you don't know Joe, obviously check him out. We know you know him, but The Realist Recruiter, best guy on LinkedIn. And thanks so much for coming on, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.